Hello, I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer, and today, as a bonus video, part of my B-Tier guides, I'm going to take you through a build guide for the dog in Dragon Age Origins. I originally wasn't going to make a build for the dog because I didn't think people were interested, but someone ended up commenting on one of my videos asking if I was going to also make builds for Shale and the dog, so here we are. The Mabari is a ferocious war dog that is quite capable in combat. However, it has very limited abilities and gear slots, so it's much harder for the dog to be able to be as powerful as your humanoid companions. If you are serious about using the dog in your party as a full companion and you're playing on PC, I recommend using the Extended Dog Talents mod by Zeruk. It adds 4 new talents, 2 of them are passives and 2 are activated. In addition, it makes the dog get a talent point every 2 levels instead of every 3 levels. Additionally, if you want to take the dog with you on your adventures but you're worried about the game being too difficult, you can use the Extra Dog Slot mod by Doister, which adds a dog whistle item to your inventory. You select 3 other party members as usual, not the dog. Then once you have entered an area, you can use the dog whistle either from your inventory or from the action hotbar to summon the dog. It will appear in a mini slot next to your portrait where a summoned creature usually appears, but you can still interact with the dog as normal as if it's a regular party member. Other than in the early game, I tend to not use the dog unless I'm using the Extra Dog Slot mod because it does generally make the game harder to replace an actual strong full companion with the dog. But it is fun to have your faithful Mabari Hound with you, helping you tear through your enemies. So let's get into the build. The auto-scaling of attributes is just as shitty with the dog as with the other companions. Due to this, if you want a dog to be a more capable combatant, I recommend you choose the Human Noble Origin for your Warden, because that means you can have the dog as a companion from level 1, and no shitty auto-scaling will occur. The main attribute you are interested in for the Mabari is Strength, as its damage as well as various bonuses to talents depend on Strength. However, I would also add a few points in Dexterity to increase the dog's defense. Defense is useful to help the dog have a higher chance to avoid attacks, and Dexterity does also increase melee attack score by 0.5 per point spent. I also recommend putting a few points in Constitution for some extra HP. The dog can't use regular health poultices. It can only consume Mabari Crunch or Double-Baked Mabari Crunch, which are useful to cure the dog's injuries, but they don't heal the dog instantly. They instead give a bonus to its health and stamina regeneration. If you want the dog to stay alive, you will need to either use a crunchy treat earlier in the fight while it's still relatively healthy, or use healing spells like heal or group heal. Some extra constitution thus can be useful so you don't have to worry as much about the dog's HP. So I recommend that whenever the dog levels up, you put 2 points in strength and then either 1 point in dexterity or constitution, up to you. The Mabari only has 8 total talents available, 12 if you have the Extended Dog Talents mod, or more I believe if you have the console version of the game, because in the console version the dog also has access to warrior talents. I am a PC player though, so I will only discuss the base dog talents. Obviously you want to unlock all of them, and will be able to do so if your dog reaches level 18. The dog starts with 2 talent points already assigned to Fortitude and Growl. It will gain an additional point every 3 levels, so at levels 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and 18, or every 2 levels if you have the Extended Dog Talents mod. Fortitude is a passive that grants plus 10% fire, cold, and electricity resistance. Growl is a great activated talent that grants an enemy a penalty of minus 15 defense for 30 seconds unless it passes a mental resistance check versus the Mabari's strength. I highly recommend unlocking Dread Howl as soon as you're able, and then completing the whole first row to reach Overwhelm. Afterwards, you can get the other 3 talents, Charge, Shred, and Nemesis. Dread Howl is one of the 2 best talents for the dog together with Overwhelm. It makes enemies in an area around the dog become stunned for a while unless they pass a mental resistance check against the Mabari's strength. This is essentially the dog's version of a mage's Mind Blast spell, but it has an even larger affected area than the spell. Combat Training is a passive that grants the dog plus 5% critical chance, plus 5 attack, and plus 2 armor. Overwhelm is the other best talent of the dog, as it can knock down a target for 5 seconds, dealing normal attack damage 5 times. You have to know, however, that Overwhelm only works against standard-sized humanoids like humans, elves, dwarves, Kunari, Hurlocks, Genlocks, and Shrieks. However, it's really powerful against these types of enemies, especially against a high-priority target such as a spellcaster or elite enemy, and you will certainly fight a large amount of these enemies that the dog will have plenty of targets to overwhelm. Charge is a decent talent, though not that amazing. It causes the Mabari to charge at an enemy, dealing normal damage if the attack hits, and knocking the opponent down for 3 seconds unless it passes a physical resistance check versus the Mabari's strength. The chance to knock down would be great, however it's dependent on the physical resistance of the enemy, and I believe it tends to be resisted a lot more, especially because a lot of enemies can have the Indomitable talent or are otherwise immune to knockdown effects. Shred is a great damaging talent that is an auto crit if it hits, and if the target can bleed, the original damage is applied again as damage over time for the next 10 seconds. Finally, Nemesis is a great passive, granting the dog plus 25 health, combat health regen, as well as health regen while exploring. In addition to talents, the dog also has 2 more bonus abilities, being able to mark certain landmarks in order to get Mabari dominance, or finding items. The Mabari can find items for you in various areas if you ask it, do you see anything interesting, anywhere outside of camp, though not while it's injured. Don't be discouraged if the dog returns with nothing, you can keep asking it and there is a chance it will come back with something. In most areas, it will have a random chance to return with either a minor item from the generic treasure list or one of a limited number of unique items. A codex entry called A Very Chewed and Moist Book, a bunch of gifts like dirty pair of pantaloons, found cake, Garbolg's backcountry reserve, tangled ball of yarn, as well as the magic staff piece of wood. There are also area-specific items the dog can dig up. A codex entry called A Letter to Someone in Highover at Lake Calenhat Docks, the duty helmet in the deep roads, all over the deep roads but definitely 100% drop rate early in the dead trenches, Deathroot all around the Brazilian forest and the Dalish camp, and assorted gemstones at the mountaintop that you reach during the Urn of Sacred Ashes quest. Throughout Ferelden, there are several objects labeled as landmark. Whenever a landmark is selected while you have the dog in your party, a message hints at the dog's interest. When a landmark is marked by the dog, aka P-Dawn, Mabari dominance is activated in that area, providing the dog with +2 strength, willpower, and constitution. The effect remains active while the dog is in that area, but it's not applied inside buildings even if they are within or adjacent to the landmark's location. There are landmarks in the Brazilian forest, the Dalish camp, Denerim Market, East Brazilian Forest, Elven Alienage, Lake Calenhat Docks, Lothering, Redcliffe, and Redcliffe Castle Courtyard. It's unfortunate that the Mabari dominance bonuses don't apply inside interiors close to the landmark, and that there aren't more such landmarks in the game. But it's quite nice to have the bonus where you can, so do let your dog interact with them whenever you see them. Moving on to gear. The Mabari only has 2 slots for equipment, a collar slot and a caddis slot, aka Warpaint. In terms of collars, my favorite is the Mabari War Harness, which grants +2 armor penetration and +8 armor. You can loot this from a chest in the Templar quarters in the Circle Tower during the Broken Circle main quest. A second good option is the Steel Spiked Collar, granting +1.5 armor penetration and +6 armor. It can be looted from a pile of bones in the northern part of the East Brazilian forest. My personal third option that other people seem to prefer is the pure female dog braid, granting +8 attack and +8 armor. This is looted from the High Dragon on the mountaintop. Personally, I prefer the armor penetration because you're already increasing the dog's attack whenever it levels up by adding to its strength. Armor penetration is a harder to increase stat, so I think it's just better. For Caddis, there are both offensive and defensive options, and it really depends on what you're looking for. I tend to go for the offensive versions, one of the following. Caddis of the Trickster grants +3 damage and can be purchased from Alamar in his Emporium in Orzammor's Deathstown. Swift Runner Warpaint grants +2 dexterity and +2 damage, so a bit of extra attack and defense from the dexterity together with the damage. This can be looted from a dead Mabari in the Return to Ostagar DLC. If you want a good defensive Caddis, I recommend Warpaint of the West Hills, which grants +9 defense and is sold by Owen in his upgraded stock, after you've saved Redcliffe as well as saving Owen's daughter Velena. The other defensive Caddises grant resistances to 1 or 2 damage types, which I don't think is that useful unless you have all of them and keep switching them out based on who you're fighting. The defense helps the dog have a higher chance to avoid attacks. You can assign specific tactics to the dog, similar to the Warden and the other companions. The dog starts with 2 tactic slots at level 1 and gains an additional slot at levels 3, 6, 10, 15, 20, and 25. You will likely not reach level 25 with the dog in the base game, so you will have to make do with a limited amount of tactic slots. I recommend setting up the following tactics. Enemy, any, usability, howl. The Howl ability is great to use as it gives a penalty to defense to an enemy, so it's great to use it as often as possible. Enemy, rank, elite, or higher, use ability Overwhelm. This will ensure your dog uses the Overwhelm ability on high priority targets if they are able to be affected by Overwhelm, of course. I also recommend setting up enemy using type of attack, magic attack, use ability Overwhelm. You want to prioritize enemy spellcasters as they can and will ruin a fight if left to their own devices for too long. You may want to set this tactic above your elite or boss targeting just to ensure that if there is a mage, your dog is going to go and overwhelm them. You can set it up so that when the dog is surrounded by at least 2 enemies, it uses Dread Howl. However, if you don't mind a bit of micromanaging, I would keep this ability out of its tactic slots, and whenever you personally want to use it, just take control of the dog and go into the middle of a large group of enemies to stun them all. Finally, you can definitely set up a simple enemy any usability Shred. Shred is a great damaging talent, so you do want the dog to use it decently often, but the other abilities are higher priority. I wouldn't really add charge to the dog's tactics, as in my opinion it's mostly a waste of stamina. Often the knockdown effect will fail and the damage just isn't good. In conclusion, the Mabari is a decently powerful companion, but in my opinion it is much better as a 5th member of the party using the extra dog slot mod. I've done my best to show you how you can utilize a dog to the best of its abilities, so now I'd like to hear from you. Do you use the dog in your playthroughs as a main companion? Do you only use it as a 5th companion with the extra dog slot mod? Or do you just not use the dog at all? You know, I actually think that the reason you can summon the dog with a kind of horn animation in Dragon Age 2 is because of the extra dog slot mod for Origins. It was a huge hit in the community at the time it was released, and I know people were super happy to see the Mabari return as a summonable extra companion to help out in combat in DA2. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this build guide for the Mabari War Hound in Dragon Age Origins. If you're interested in seeing more of my Dragon Age videos, as well as videos on other RPGs, do remember to subscribe and leave a like and comment while you're at it too. This has been B Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.